Where's the money? I demanded, and I stared at the empty safe. My brother Jason just stood there, phone in hand, not even looking me in the eye. The bedroom was dead silent. I don't know what you're talking about, Jason finally said, but his eyes kept darting to the door. Classic tell. He'd always been a terrible liar. Cut the crap. You took it. I stepped closer, my voice barely above a whisper. That money was for Nathan's surgery. Your nephew's surgery. Jason's face hardened. Maybe you should have kept it in a bank instead of your bedroom, like some paranoid freak. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own brother. The same person who'd helped me move into this house after my divorce, who'd been Uncle Jason, Nathan's favorite person after his deadbeat dad disappeared. And now he'd stolen from a sick 8-year-old. I'm calling Mom, I said, pulling out my phone. Jason lunged forward, grabbing my wrist. Don't. There was panic in his eyes. Real panic. And suddenly I knew what this was about. The new car he'd been showing off. The expensive shoes. The weekend trips. My brother had a gambling problem, and he just gambled away my son's future. Michael, calm down. My mother's voice was stiff, defensive. Jason said you misplaced the money. Are you sure you didn't move it somewhere? I paced in my kitchen, phone pressed against my ear. It was almost midnight. Mom, there was no misplacing $15,000 in cash. It was in the safe. Now it's gone. Jason took it. He wouldn't do that. He's got gambling debts, Mom. Look at his Instagram. New car, trips to Vegas. Where do you think that money's coming from? His part-time job at the community college? Her silence told me everything. She already knew. My own mother knew her son was stealing from her grandson, and she was covering for him. The surgery is tomorrow, I said, my voice breaking. The down payment is due at 9 a.m. What am I supposed to tell Nathan when they turn us away? We'll figure it out, Mom said vaguely. Jason's just going through a rough time. I hung up, stared at the kitchen wall where Nathan's growth chart showed years of measurements, each one marked with a little star sticker. His growth had slowed these past 2 years as his condition worsened. The surgery was supposed to fix that. I opened my laptop and typed an email to Nathan's doctor, asking for a postponement. Begging, really. Then I pulled up the bank account. $2,000. Nowhere near enough. My phone buzzed. A text from Jason, *sorry. We'll pay you back. Just need time. I almost threw the phone across the room. Did something happen, Dad? Nathan asked from his hospital bed, oxygen tubes in his nose. Why did Dr. Miller look so worried? I tried to keep my voice steady. We had to reschedule your surgery, buddy. Because of the money? His eyes were too knowing for an 8-year-old. Who told you about that? I heard you talking to Grandma last night. He fidgeted with his blanket. Uncle Jason took it, didn't he? I sat on the edge of the bed, carefully avoiding the tubes. You don't need to worry about that stuff, okay? That's grown-up stuff. Is that why you were yelling at him on the phone this morning? I closed my eyes. Of course he'd heard that too. The walls in our house were thin, and I hadn't exactly been quiet. Uncle Jason made a mistake, I said, trying to find the right words. A big one. But I'm going to fix it. Nathan looked at me with those serious eyes of his. Are you going to forgive him? I couldn't answer that. Not honestly. Not in a way an 8-year-old should hear. Let's talk about something else, okay? Tell me about that book Miss Sarah brought you. As Nathan launched into an explanation of his new dinosaur encyclopedia, my phone buzzed again. A text from my colleague Sarah, just heard. So sorry. Teachers pooling money to help. The kindness broke something in me, and I had to excuse myself to the bathroom to hide my tears. When I got home from the hospital, there was an envelope taped to my front door. $2,000 cash inside. No note. I knew it was from my parents. A Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. $2,000 down, $13,000 to go. And not even an admission of what Jason had done. My phone rang as I walked inside. Jason's number. I let it go to voicemail. He called again immediately. And again. Finally, I answered. What? Mike, you need to stop telling people I stole from you. His voice was slurred. Drunk or high, probably both. I'm only telling the truth. You told my boss. He called me in today. Asked if I was stealing to cover gambling debts. What the hell, man? I hadn't actually. But I had told Sarah, and Portland was a small town. Word gets around. Maybe don't steal from your nephew, and people won't talk about you stealing from your nephew. I told you I'd pay it back, he shouted. I've got a system. 2 more bets and I can double what I took. I ended the call and blocked his number. My laptop was still open on the kitchen table. I created a new folder and named it evidence. Then I took screenshots of Jason's social media posts, all the expensive purchases, the gambling trips, the timeline matching up perfectly with when the money went missing. I added screenshots of text messages, bank statements showing my withdrawals for Nathan's surgery fund, photos of the empty safe. Then I picked up my phone and called the police. "I'm sorry, Mr. Foster, but this is a family matter." The officer, Rodriguez, according to his nameplate, looked genuinely apologetic as he sat across from me at my kitchen table. "He stole $15,000, I said, trying to keep my voice level. "That's grand theft." "Do you have proof it was your brother specifically? Security cameras? Witnesses?" "I have." I gestured to my laptop. "All of this circumstantial evidence. The timeline, his gambling habit, his new purchases, Mr. Foster, courts need more than circumstantial evidence. And frankly, most prosecutors won't pursue cases between family members unless there's overwhelming proof." I ran a hand through my hair. "So he just gets away with it? My son's surgery gets postponed indefinitely because my brother has a gambling problem, and there's nothing I can do." Officer Rodriguez closed his notebook. "You could pursue a civil case. Small claims court. But that takes time. And from what you've told me about your brother's financial situation, even if you win, collecting might be difficult." After the officer left, I sat in the silent house, staring at the wall of photos. Nathan's school pictures, family gatherings, holidays. Jason was in so many of them, always with his arm around Nathan's shoulders, always smiling that easy smile that made everyone trust him. I took down every single one of those photos and put them in a box in the closet. 3 days later, I was grading papers in my classroom when Sarah knocked on the door. "You've got a visitor," she said, her expression unreadable. Jason stood behind her, hands in his pockets. He looked terrible, unshaven, bloodshot eyes, rumpled clothes. "I'll leave you two alone," Sarah said, giving me a questioning look. I nodded, and she closed the door behind her. Jason and I stared at each other across the empty classroom. "You blocked my number," he finally said. "You stole my son's surgery money." He winced. "Look, I've hit rock bottom, okay? I'm going to meetings now. Gamblers Anonymous. And I'm selling the car. Should get at least 10 grand for it." I said nothing, just stared at him. "I messed up, Mike. I messed up bad. But I'm going to fix it." He pulled a folded check from his pocket and placed it on my desk. $5,000. "It's a start. I'll have the rest in 2 weeks. Why should I believe you?" Jason rubbed his face. "I don't expect you to, but I've got proof." He pulled out his phone, showed me a bank statement. Dad co-signed a personal loan. "The rest is coming as soon as it processes." I wanted to believe him. Part of me did. But another part, the part that had to explain to Nathan why his surgery wasn't happening, the part that had been betrayed not just by Jason, but by my parents who knew and covered for him, that part wasn't ready to forgive. 2 weeks, I said, not touching the check. "If the money's not there by then, I'm filing charges. Mom and Dad won't be able to protect you." Jason nodded, relief washing over his face. "I promise, Mike. I'm going to make this right." I watched him leave, then sat back in my chair, wondering if I just made another mistake by trusting him again. That weekend, my parents invited us all for dinner. A family meeting to heal wounds, according to my mother's text. Nathan was excited. He hadn't seen his grandparents in almost 2 weeks, not since the surgery was postponed. I wasn't thrilled about the idea, but for Nathan's sake, I agreed. When we arrived, Jason's car was already in the driveway. The same new Audi he bought with who knows what money. So much for selling it. Nathan ran ahead into the house while I lingered on the porch, steeling myself. Through the window, I could see my mother hugging Nathan, my father ruffling his hair. Jason stood awkwardly to the side, not meeting my eyes through the glass. I walked in, and the conversation immediately died. "Michael," Mom said, coming over to hug me. I let her, but didn't return the embrace. "We're so glad you came." "Nathan wanted to see you," I said simply. Dinner was awkward, to say the least. Nathan chatted happily, oblivious to the tension, while the adults made stilted small talk about the weather, politics, anything but the elephant in the room. Finally, as Mom served dessert, Dad cleared his throat. "So, we wanted to talk about Nathan's surgery." I set down my fork. "What about it?" "We've been thinking," Mom said, glancing at Jason, "that we should all pitch in as a family. Your father and I are taking money from our retirement fund." "That's not necessary," I interrupted. "Jason promised me the money 2 days ago. Said he was selling his car and taking out a loan. The money should be here in 2 weeks." I looked directly at my brother. "Right, Jason? Jason stared at his pie. Yeah, about that. My stomach dropped. The loan fell through, he mumbled. And the car. I owe more on it than I thought. The room went silent except for the scrape of Nathan's fork against his plate as he ate his pie, seemingly absorbed in his dessert, but listening to every word. You lied, I said flatly. Again. Michael, please, Mom interjected. He's trying. We're all trying to help. Are you? I looked around the table. Because it seems like you're all just enabling him. He steals from Nathan, lies about paying it back, and you're still defending him. It's not that simple, Dad said, his face reddening. Jason has a disease. Gambling addiction is serious. So is my son's health. I stood up so quickly my chair fell backward. Nathan, we're leaving. But Dad, Nathan looked up, fork halfway to his mouth. Now, Nathan. My mother reached for my arm. Michael, please don't go like this. We can work it out. I pulled away from her. You've had 3 weeks to work it out. Meanwhile, Nathan's getting worse, and his surgery keeps getting pushed back. But hey, at least Jason still has his fancy car, right? Jason finally looked up. You're being a sanctimonious prick? You know that? Not everyone can be perfect like you, Michael the martyr. Something cold and hard settled in my chest. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Nathan, go wait in the car. But Dad, now, please. Nathan reluctantly left the table, casting worried glances over his shoulder as he headed for the door. When I heard the front door close, I set my phone on the table and pressed play on a recording. Jason's voice filled the dining room. Asterisk. Only borrowed it. Mike's got insurance for the kid anyway. He doesn't need that cash. Asterisk, my mother gasped. I kept playing. Such a drama queen about everything. Kid's probably not even that sick. Asterisk, I stopped the recording and looked at Jason, whose face had gone pale. That was you on the phone with your gambling buddy last week. I recorded it when you but dialed me by accident. Guess you were too drunk to notice you called me instead of him. Jason's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Insurance doesn't cover experimental procedures, I said quietly. You knew that. We all discussed it when the doctors first suggested this surgery. But you were too busy thinking about your next bet to remember, I guess. I picked up my phone and headed for the door. Michael, wait. My father called after me. What are you going to do with that recording? I paused, hand on the doorknob. I don't know yet. Depends on whether I see that money in my account before Nathan's condition gets worse. As I walked out, I heard my mother start to cry and my father's voice, lower now, but clearly furious, directed at Jason. For the next week, I didn't hear from any of them. I took Nathan to his follow-up appointments, answered emails from concerned parents at school, and waited. Then, on Friday afternoon, as I was leaving school, I found Jason sitting on the hood of my car. Get off, I said, not breaking stride. He slid off, hands raised in a placating gesture. Just hear me out. 2 minutes. I unlocked the car door. Clock's ticking. I'm checking into a rehab facility tomorrow, he said quickly. 30-day program for gambling addiction. Good for you, I said, throwing my bag into the passenger seat. Mom and Dad sold their boat, he continued. And I sold my car this morning. For real this time. He pulled out his phone, showed me a bank transfer receipt. $13,000 transferred to my account that morning. I checked my own phone. The money was there. That's $15,000 total, with the 2 they gave you before, Jason said. I know it doesn't fix what I did, but It's a start, I said, surprised to find I'm in it. Jason looked at me hopefully. So we're good. No, I said, getting into the car. We're not good. The money means Nathan gets his surgery. It doesn't mean I trust you again. His face fell, but he nodded. I understand. I started the engine. When you get out of rehab, if you stick with it, if you stay clean, maybe we can talk then. I will, he said. I promise, Mike. I nodded and pulled away, watching him grow smaller in my rearview mirror. Nathan's surgery was scheduled for the following Tuesday. As the nurses prepared him, he looked up at me anxiously. Will it hurt? You'll be asleep the whole time, I assured him. And when you wake up, I'll be right here. Will Uncle Jason come visit me after? I hesitated. Uncle Jason is getting some help right now. For some problems he has. Nathan nodded seriously. Because of his gambling. I blinked in surprise. How did you know about that? I heard Grandma and Grandpa talking about it. He fidgeted with his hospital bracelet. Is that why he took the money? Because he's sick. In a way, I said carefully. But being sick doesn't make it okay to hurt other people. I know, Nathan said. Like when I had chicken pox and gave it to Mia at school even though you told me to stay home. I had to apologize. I smiled despite myself. Something like that. Yeah. The anesthesiologist came in then, and soon Nathan was being wheeled away to surgery. As I waited in the hospital lobby, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "We're in the cafeteria if you want company." Asterisk, I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to keep them at arm's length after how they'd handled everything. But another part, the part that remembered all the times they'd been there for me after my divorce, all the times they'd helped with Nathan, that part won out. "Be there in 5 asterisk, I texted back. When I walked into the cafeteria, I saw them huddled around a table. My parents, looking older than I remembered, and Sarah from school, who gave me a small wave. "Any news?" Dad asked as I sat down. "Still in surgery," I said. "Should be another hour at least." Mom pushed a coffee toward me. "We got this for you." "Thanks." I took a sip, the bitter hospital coffee strangely comforting. "We're sorry, Michael," Dad said abruptly. "We should have believed you from the start. We should have held Jason accountable." I stared into my coffee. "Yes, you should have." "We know," Mom said, her eyes red-rimmed. "We've always made excuses for him. It's our fault he got this bad." "No," I sighed. "Jason made his own choices. But you enabled him." "We're not doing that anymore," Dad said firmly. "The rehab facility is excellent, but strict. No phones, no visitors for the first 2 weeks. And when he gets out, he's moving in with us so we can keep an eye on him. And he'll be paying us back for the boat," Mom added. It wasn't perfect. There were still conversations to be had, trust to be rebuilt. But it was a start. "Nathan's been asking about him," I admitted. "He knows about the gambling." Mom nodded sadly. "That boy notices everything." "He also said something interesting," I continued, "about being sick not making it okay to hurt people, but still needing to apologize." "Wise beyond his years," Sarah commented. "He gets that from his father," Mom said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. I didn't pull away this time. 6 hours later, the surgeon came out to tell us the procedure had been successful. Nathan was in recovery, still groggy but stable. When I was finally allowed to see him, I found him pale but awake, already asking when he could have popsicles. "The blue kind," he specified drowsily. "Not the red ones." I laughed, relief making me lightheaded. "Blue popsicles it is." As Nathan drifted back to sleep, I took out my phone and pulled up the recording of Jason, the one I'd threatened to use against him if he didn't pay back the money. My finger hovered over the delete button. In the end, I didn't delete it. Not yet. Trust had to be earned back slowly, with actions, not just promises. But I did put the phone away and focus on what mattered most. My son, breathing easily for the first time in months, his future stretching out before him again. Was I right to blackmail my brother with that recording? Should I have pressed charges instead, or forgiven him completely? What would you have done in my position?